we want to go ahead and get going, and let's open up in a word of prayer.
And there is power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, wonder.
Blood, power in the blood, and there is power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, wonder-working power in the precious blood of the Lamb. Would you discern this for Jesus your King? There's power in the blood, power in the blood. Would you live daily his praises to sing? There's wonderful power in the blood. And there is power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, wonder-working power in the precious blood of the Lamb. Did I miss verse 3? Okay.
He always gets lost in the hymns. I don't know why it's numbered and labeled, but what are you going to do, right? So a few months ago we talked about learning new songs on Sunday night, and so that's what we're going to do tonight. These are both worship songs. I'm sure you'll know the second one. The first one maybe you may or may not have heard, but it's real easy. So just follow along. It's not super wordy. And we are going to sing about the goodness of God tonight. I love you, Lord, for your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I wake up, till I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus.
And all my life you have been faithful. Yes, He has. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire, and in darkest nights, you were close like no other. I've known you as a father, I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God. In all my life you have been faithful. In all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. In all my life you have been faithful. In all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Amen. That's where we live, in the goodness of God. Thank the Lord, He is faithful,
Praise Jesus.
even when we are not.
Come on now.
All right. Thank you for the cross, Lord. Thank you for the price you paid, bearing all my sin and shame. In love you came and gave amazing All right, you may be seated. Tonight we're going to be in Revelation chapter 17. Believe it or not, it's been 5 weeks since I spoke on Sunday night. We had, what did we have? We had end of month fellowship, then we had Labor Day, then we had revival, then we had Seth and Kelsey, then we had fellowship again. I'm like, man, it's been a long time. Forever. Do I have control? Yay, control. So Revelation chapter 16, 17, see, I don't even know what chapter we're in. We saw the last few verses of 16 were the seventh bowl of wrath that was poured out by the seven angels with the last seven judgments. And with that bowl of wrath, last time, there was an earth-shaking, mountain-moving, leveling, hell the size of sidewalks, wrath. Okay, so everything changed with that seventh bowl of wrath. Tonight we're going to be in another parentheses, which is things happening while other things are happening. So we've had this a few times since we've been doing this study. So this is just kind of what's happening while other things, we've already seen what's happened, now we're seeing what's happening in another area. So let's read Revelation 17, 1 through 18. Does anybody want to read that? I'm not even in Revelation 17. Let's get right here. Anyone? Okay.
One of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and talked to me, saying to me, "Come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters, and of the kings of the earth."
here we see one of the angels that had one of the 7 bowls of wrath. Okay? There's 7 different angels. This is one. It doesn't say which one. And so he is about to show John the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters. We're going to see in the reading that in the Bible that in verse 5 tells us who the harlot is. Kind of. Sort of, it does. And that is Babylon. Somebody tell me what a harlot is. Okay. Okay, a prostitute. Yes, that would be a harlot in the nicest possible way to say so. A person who provides certain acts of money, certain acts for money, excuse me. Another definition is someone who uses a skill or ability in a way that is considered unworthy, usually for financial gain. So, yeah, that would be the definition of a harlot. Not something that you want to have a life ambition to be. Okay? So we're going to see that this is a spiritual harlot or prostitute. Okay? It is not an actual woman, but it is a picture of a spiritual harlot. In the Bible, has anyone ever heard of God calling his people, or God saying to his people, you played the harlot? Do you know what that means? What were the people doing? Usually when God says to you, you have played the harlot, it is not something you should be doing. It means that you have committed spiritual adultery against God. And what that means is by putting everything else before him, by worshiping other gods, the little g's, not the big G's, right? And fornicating with other false gods. Spiritual adultery is what that means. When God says to his people in the Old Testament, which we've talked about several times, how one generation would serve him and the next would not. And then they would come, but the next generation would come back, and then the next one would fall away. Those generations that left God and served other gods, little ones, were committing spiritual adultery. They were playing the harlot against God. And so what we're going to find out here is that John is seeing a picture of the one world false religion that is going to come alongside the Antichrist and the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. The phrase great harlot who sits on many waters is a picture of worldwide influence or power. When you have a list like in verse 15 that says peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues, it means worldwide. That's what the world is made up of. Peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues, right? So verse 2 says that the kings of the world committed fornication with this harlot, and that the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So this tells us that this harlot will influence not only the kings of the earth, but regular people as well. When it says peoples, nations, tongues, it means everybody. And this harlot, who is going to be a one world religion, is going to bring people in the world, of the world. And it's going to be intoxicating. It's going to sound good. Have you ever heard a false religion sound good? We hear it in the church all the time. It's okay. Live how you want. God understands. That's false teaching. That's false religion. That goes against what God says to do. But people like to hear that. They want to hear that the sin that they are committing is okay because God understands and he knows you. He knows everything, right? But that is a half-truth. He does know everything. He knows everything. Things that only you and him know, he knows. And things that you don't even think he might know, he knows anyways. So you can hide everything. You can fool everybody in the world, but you can't fool God. And so John is fixing to show a behind-the-scenes vision about what this is all about. And he sees this woman sitting on a scarlet beast. And it's the same woman and the same beast that he's seen before. This beast, which we know is the Antichrist, is full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Again, Scripture, interpreting Scripture, right? Ed Reimer in his book, The Unveiling, I never remember the name of that book, though I've read it many times, says that the fact that John is taken into the Spirit shows John the origin of the harlot. It's like being taken back in time to be able to understand. 4 and 5 really shows us a picture of this harlot's attire. Yes, I am. She's up there. I'm forgetting about my PowerPoint. It's been so long, right? It says that she was arrayed in purple and scarlet. She had on gold, precious stones, pearls, and in her hand she had a golden cup full of abominations and of the filthiness of her fornication. So this woman is dressed like royalty, right? Purple, gold, scarlet, these are all colors of royalty, like a queen, if you will. Someone who is powerful and has a lot of pull in the world. And what this woman represents will have a lot of power and a lot of pull in the whole world. In the unveiling, there is a theory about who this one world religion will be. And I'll share that with you in just a few minutes. We see that on her head, if you can see, well, I got it right there. It's kind of scribbly on her head, but this is what it says. On her head is written the name Mystery Babylon, the great mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. How would you like for that to be written on you so that everyone can see? You know, we think about the book of the Scarlet Letter, right? This is way worse. You don't want this. So the first thing that comes to my mind is that she must have been had some kind of a huge forehead, right? For all of that to be written, because that's what it says. It was written on her forehead. She must have had an abnormally large forehead. Yeah, this is how my brain works, right? So you can look at the name that was written on this woman's forehead, and there are 3 parts to it. The first part is mystery. The second part is Babylon the Great, and the third part is the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. Something that we have to keep in mind is this is not an actual woman, okay? She really doesn't have an abnormally large forehead. It's not an actual woman. It is a system, a religious system, if you will. So when the Antichrist sets up his literal kingdom on the earth, it's going to be where Babylon was once located. So let's have a little history lesson on Babylon. Anyone ever heard of Nimrod? Yeah. Anyone ever called anyone a Nimrod? Yeah. If you've been called one, it's not good. It doesn't mean you're the brightest candle in the box, right? It means you're kind of dumb. So Nimrod, he was the first guy ever to attempt a one-world religion. Yeah. This is why he has a negative connotation on his name. This is why you call people a Nimrod if they are not doing something stupid, or whatever. He was the overseer of the tower that all the people in the world were going to build up to heaven. What was that tower called? Babel, right? And God said, man, these people are determined. If I don't do something, they're actually going to build a tower to heaven, right? He knew that unity and determination causes change, which is something good, but not when you're trying to build a tower to heaven. So what did God do? He confused the languages. No one could communicate with anyone, right? That's where we get all these languages that everybody wants to learn or doesn't want to learn. Can you imagine being there? And people are just talking blah, 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 like the clickers in Africa. That's what makes me, what? What are you doing, right? So he confused the languages so that they could no longer effectively communicate. Isn't it great that he did that instead of just wiping them all out? He could have done that, but he didn't. Then the people were dispersed throughout all the earth. So this kind of planted a one-world religion seed when Nimrod tried to get everybody together in the whole world to build this tower, right? They wanted to do it because they thought they could. Under the rule of the Antichrist, it will happen, that one-world religion. And this is what John is getting insight to here. So the name mystery means that there will be hidden things about this religious system. The Babylon the Great says that this woman or this system comes from Babylon. Babylon is the area where the old Roman Empire was. Then the mother of harlots shows that this woman or religious system will have great influence in the whole world. There are a lot of Bible scholars who believe. Does anybody know who people think the one world religion is going to be before I do a spoiler alert? What religion would be the one world religion? What? Okay, anybody else? Islam. Okay, so that is what the guy who wrote the book, The Unveiling, that's what he thought. And he wrote that book in 1990, okay? And he said that the Roman Catholic Church would be the leader of the one world religion. But he also said that, that it would be a lot different. And if you look at the Catholic Church now, from 1990, it is a lot different. There's some reasons that people believe that it will be the Roman Catholic Church who institutes the one world religion. So here are some reasons that they believe. This is our Pope now. Well, not our Pope, but this is the Pope now. Let me take that back a second. right? This is the Pope now. And this is one of his famous quotes since he has been Pope. And you know, popes are in there until they die. There's only been one Pope that I know of that said, I can't do it anymore too. And they resigned before they died. I don't think this guy is going to do that. He's very liberal, okay? And this says it is not necessary to believe in God to be a good person. In a way, the traditional notion of God is outdated. One can be spiritual but not religious. It is not necessary to go to church and give money. For many, nature can be a church. Some of the best people in history did not believe in God, while some of the worst deeds were done in his name. So this is what he promotes. He also is very open to things that are against the word of God. Homosexuality, he says that's okay. Abortion, he says that's okay. He has openly read the Quran and welcomes Islam with open arms. He says that Islam and Christianity are the same. And so I saw this, where he met with the guy of Islam, and he signed a covenant with him that Catholics and Muslims were the same, and they needed to work together to make a better world. Okay? And so he also has made the statement that Allah, Jehovah, and Muhammad are all the same person, which we know is not true, right? There is only one God, and that these are all names of God. So there are a lot of people who think that he will be the Antichrist. I don't think that he's the Antichrist. I think he probably could institute help with the one world religion, but he might not even be here by the time that happens. It could be tomorrow. It could be 10 years from now. Who knows? But this is a reason that a lot of people believe that Catholicism will be the one world religion. Okay? And then there is Islam. These two religions, because Catholicism and Christianity are not the same. A lot of people think that they are because they have Jesus and Mary and, you know, all these things. But they're not the same. Catholicism is not a Christian religion. So, Islam, these two are the fastest growing religions in the world. When ISIS was having all of their people, you know, they were just recruiting people left and right that would go and blow themselves up or do whatever. I can't remember if it was CBS or one of the big news stations did a study, I guess, on this. And they were targeting young women. And so they found these young women who had converted to Islam, and they asked them, you know, why did you do this? What was the purpose? I don't understand. I don't understand why you would be willing to go and blow yourself up. You know, I mean, really, your brain does not tell you to do that. And they said, we just want to be a part of something. That's it. So in that place, the church has failed because there is plenty for people to be a part of in the church. But we're too busy worrying about me and you and you and you to worry about everybody on the outside of the building. And so they were converting themselves to Islam and joining up with ISIS and okay with blowing themselves up to go to hell, okay? Because that's what's going to happen because they wanted to be a part of something. Shame on us as the church for not showing people that they can be a part of this, that they can be a part of the family of God, and that there is purpose in that, you know? So these are the two things that the two religions that could possibly be the one world religion. Regardless of who heads it up, it's going to be false and it's going to be anti-God. It's going to go against what he says. You can decide, you know, but my disclaimer is if you keep yourself straight with God, you won't have to worry about it in the first place, right? We don't have to worry about these things. Verse 6 tells us that this harlot was drunk with the blood of the saints of the martyrs of Jesus. Even when John saw her, though, he was amazed. And this tells me just how deceptive this is going to be to people. You know, it's not just going to be like, oh, we're anti-God, we're whatever. It's going to be sly and slick, and people are just going to fall for it and be in awe. Okay? Verse 6 tells us I already said that. Verse 7 through 18 are going to tell us more in depth about this woman and the beast. 7 tells us that the angel showing John all of this is surprised that John is taken back for a moment. You know, it said he was in amazement at this woman. And the angel is surprised. He said, what are you doing? You know, why are you taken back? And verse 8 basically tells us that this woman that is riding the beast has been in operations since the Tower of Babel and their attempt at a one-world religion then. So all of this goes all the way back to that. Just like the spirit of abortion when Moses was a baby. That all started in Egypt. And then it came up again when Jesus was a baby. Kill all the male children, right? We'll eventually get them. That's what they said for Moses too. Kill all the male children, 2 and younger, and we'll take care of this. So all these things, all this, these sinful things all go back to a place. Our sinful ways, the choices that we make that are not what God would have us to make, go back to Adam and Eve and obedience. You know, everything has a root, and this woman is from the root of the Tower of Babel, this one world religion, this effort to get everybody going in one direction. And so Babel later became Babylon. And one day Babylon is going to be the headquarters of the Antichrist, where it used to be, the old Roman Empire. Verse 8 tells us that the beast is going to be basically killed and raised back from the dead, full of the devil, which we've already studied about in a previous chapter. Remember that? He was, and then he was dead, and then he was again. And that he made an idol, right? Remember that? The image that if you didn't bow down and worship, you were dead. So this is the same beast, just different details, because we're in the parentheses. The angel tells John that the one whose names are not written down in the book of life are going to be amazed that the Antichrist was dead, or alive and dead, and alive again. If you remember, when we initially talked about this, we understood that Satan has a counterfeit of everything that God has. And so the beast or the Antichrist being alive and dead and then alive again is trying to look like Jesus, right? There's only one person that has actually done that for real, unless God raised them up. But this is like the one who is living inside of him. You know, he's a liar. The Antichrist is going to be a liar. Satan is a liar. All that jazz. Verse 9 says that the 7 heads are the 7 mountains that the woman is sitting on. So these mountains will actually not be physical mountains, right? Because this is a picture. They actually represent 7 world empires who have influenced human government throughout history and ruled over Israel. So in the unveiling, Ed Reimer lists these governments or these empires. So I'm going to list them and go over them briefly as well. The first one, which would be the first oppressors or rulers over the Jews, were Egypt under the Pharaohs. They oppressed the Jews 400 years. Remember, let my people go? Yeah, 400 years. Does anybody know why they even became slaves in Egypt? No. Joseph. That is correct. Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers because he was the favorite. Nobody liked him. They wanted him to die. The oldest brother said, no, you're not going to kill him. Throw him in that pit. Some gypsies, for lack of a better word, come by. And they're like, just sell him to them, and he'll be out of our hair forever. They sell him. He goes to Egypt. He's a slave. He rises up in the country and becomes second in command because he can interpret dreams. A dream is what got him in the pit in the first place because he was a little proud that he said everybody was going to bow to him, but it came to pass because then there was a famine in the land and he was in charge of the food. And his brothers came back to him, not knowing it was him. And finally he revealed that and brought the family there. And so Israel became a part of Egypt. Just one family of 12 brothers. And from that family of 12 brothers grew millions. And Pharaoh was worried about that. He said, they're so big in number, we've got to do something. We've got to make them slaves. And so that's how they became to be in 400 years of slavery in Egypt. And then God sent Moses, and Satan tried to take him out, and he delivered them. The second mountain is Assyria. They were the second oppressors over Israel who tried to conquer and rule her. Number 3 is Babylon, ruled by Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel's day. So he took all the young men, the good, healthy ones, and took Israel captive. And if you want to read a thriller, Daniel is it. He's got everything. Number 4 is the Medo-Persian Europe, the second of the 5 kingdoms in Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Remember, he had a dream of a statue, and it had different elements, different materials in it. And each material represented a kingdom. Number 5 is Greece under Alexander the Great, which would be the 3rd empire in Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Number 6 is Rome under the Caesars, which is the 4th kingdom in the dream. And number 7 is the revised Roman Empire, which would be the last kingdom in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, aka the one yet to come. Okay? And so then it says that the Antichrist will have an 8th kingdom. Anyway, so these are the mountains that the lady is sitting on. They're not actually mountains, they're kingdoms. And I'm so glad that people have the brain to do this kind of research, you know, because it took years and years for this guy to research all this out and be led by God. And this book, the whole entire Bible, is like a puzzle. You know, things that we're talking about tonight were prophesied way in the Old Testament. And you got to know where to find the pieces. So I love the way that it connects the Old Testament and the New Testament. And God is the only one who could have designed that. You know, no man could do this. Each of the mountains are kingdoms. Why do you think that it's important to discuss right in the middle of what's supposed to tell us who this harlot is and the beast that she's riding, that we have these kingdoms? Anyone? Basically, it shows us where the woman is from, where she stems from. She is the one with the 10 horns or 10 kingdoms that have not received a kingdom yet, but have authority with the beast, and they are all of one mind, and will give their power and authority to the beast. So there are people who dedicate their lives. I would call this chapter of Revelation a dual prophecy. These 10 kingdoms are also represented as the 10 toes of Daniel. Remember, the toes crumbled, right? If you ever read Daniel about this. Ed Reimer in his studies has this thought that the woman, or the one world religious system, and the beast and Satan himself will fight against the Lamb, who we know is Jesus, right? And we them fighting along, but we're really not going to be fighting. We're just going to be hanging out, and Jesus is going to be handling it, which is great. It calls the ones who are with Jesus the called, chosen, and faithful. So that's who we are in Christ. Even if we don't feel like it, that's who we are. The last 4 verses of this chapter tell of the in the tongues, and that it's a worldwide influence. So this is going to be a demonic thing that will fool and trick people. This woman, this is what she represents. The 10 horns on the beast will hate the harlot and make her desolate and naked, and will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Doesn't that sound like a thrill a minute, right? We're going to see in chapter 18 the destruction of this woman or system or city or is so power hungry. The beast would be the Antichrist. He's so power hungry, and he wants everyone to worship him, that he's going to get jealous of this one world religion and the popularity, because we read that it would be worldwide. And he's going to set out and destroy her. So the phrase, eat her flesh and burn her with fire, is a reference to show her destruction. And like we've talked about before, most likely by nuclear weapons. The eating of the burning with fire. Think of, because you're believing his bull. And so God can use the enemy to fulfill his, and the jealousy between the beast and the religious system is going to bring that down, because ultimately God is going to win in the end, and his kingdom is going to be the greatest. Then the last verse of this chapter says that the woman whom you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. So this harlot is both a one world religious system and a city. And this proves that. Babylon, the old Roman Empire, which will be the revised Roman Empire. So here's some things that we can gather from this harlot. that her descriptive names reveal her historical roots, that it roots back to Babylon. The mystery is that she's both a system and a city, that the woman will govern the nations with a demonic one-world religion, and before the 10 nations plan her destruction, she will be adored by the world. This is a hard chapter, the fall of Babylon the Great. So another angel is going to come down from heaven, and 18.
That Babylon was in Iraq, or Iran. Empire, what I think of is in Italy. So, what,
It's the old churches. That's what you're thinking about, because it's the Roman Catholic Church.